It's kind of funny. When you buy a complex piece of hardware, or even just a moderately fancy coffee maker, it comes with a manual.
Right, yeah. Like a thick booklet.
Exactly. There's a troubleshooting guide, an index, a very specific set of instructions for, what you're supposed to do when that little red light starts flashing. But we wake up every single day running literally the most complex software in the known universe. I mean, our own minds, our relationships, our daily workflows, and we are entirely winging it. We expect ourselves to instinctively know how to handle the glitches.
It really is kind of the ultimate design flaw of the human experience.
Yeah.
We're thrust into this massive, nonstop stream of data and social interactions, completely lacking a diagnostic guide for our own internal operating system. We just sort of, hope we don't crash when the bandwidth gets maxed out.
Exactly. And that brings us to the massive and honestly very eclectic stack of sources we've got on the table for you today.
It's a weird mix.
It really is. If you just glance at this pile, it looks completely chaotic. Like, on one side, we have highly technical software documentation for productivity tools like Notion, Zapier, and Workflowy.
Right.
Then we have academic guides breaking down analog learning systems like the Cornell note-taking method.
Which is super old school.
Very old school. And sitting right next to those, we've got deep psychological research covering neuroplasticity, emotional maturity, and the science of secure relational attachment.
Like you said, it looks like the reading list for 3 entirely different graduate degrees.
It does. But the mission of this custom-tailored deep dive is actually incredibly focused. We are going to synthesize all these diverse ideas to build you a unified systems manual for a well-lived life.
I love that.
Yeah, we're building a bridge between organizing your external digital workspace and mastering your internal emotional and relational world. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, it makes perfect sense to start with the external, because before we can effectively manage the chaos inside our minds, our deepest instinct is usually to try and manage our external inputs.
Right. Clean off the desk first.
Exactly. We want a clean dashboard. We want the noise to stop. And modern tools are attempting to solve this exact problem of information fragmentation. Take Notion, for example.
Sure.
The core philosophy there isn't just about, taking notes. It's about acting as a central hub. It can embed content from over 1,900 different domains using something called iframe.
Wow, almost 2,000. So instead of having 50 tabs open and completely losing your mind trying to find that one link your coworker sent you.
Yeah, the worst.
You can have your digital whiteboards, your cloud documents, your design files, and your PDFs all living dynamically on one single page.
Yeah.
It's trying to be the ultimate unified dashboard.
And it does a pretty good job.
It does. And what's wild about the tutorials we looked at is this incredible power of creating multiple linked databases in a single view. Like, you can look at a project as a simple list, and then with a click, turn it into a Kanban board or a calendar. It's the exact same underlying data, but visualized exactly how your brain needs to see it at that specific moment.
Then we see tools like Workflowy pushing similar updates to help structure thought externally, too. They've introduced these crosstab drag and drop features and timeline extensions.
Which is super helpful for visual thinkers.
Very much so. If you think about why this matters, it really comes down to cognitive load theory. Raw, infinite bullet points just overwhelm the brain's working memory.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you structure those thoughts chronologically or visually, you are essentially externalizing your executive function. You're letting the software hold the structure so your prefrontal cortex is freed up to actually do the problem solving.
And it goes beyond just organizing the data, right? It's about organizing the actions, automating the busy work. Zapier is essentially a masterclass in this.
Well, Zapier's magic.
It really is. It removes the human bottleneck entirely. It acts like this digital nervous system for your workspace. It uses API and workflow keys to connect over 5,000 different apps so they can talk to each other.
The automation aspect is crucial for scaling your time. Like a simple action. Say someone submits a form or updates a stage in your CRM.
Yeah.
Zapier can automatically trigger an app, like Approve It, sending a signal directly to your manager's desk for approval.
Without a human ever touching it.
Exactly. Without sending a manual email. The external system is doing the heavy lifting, routing the work effortlessly.
But, okay, here's the trap. We automate all these workflows, we get all this time back, and we build these beautiful dashboards.
Right.
But capturing data and automating workflows isn't the same thing as actually learning or processing information.
That is a huge distinction. function.
Yeah, we have all these digital tools that allow us to type 100 words a minute, but the Cornell note-taking technique, which is a completely analog pen and paper method,
Very analog.
it's still the gold standard for actual comprehension. You just divide a physical page into 3 sections. You have a narrow cue column on the left for keywords, a wider notes column on the right, and then a summary section at the bottom.
And the contrast between this analog method and digital typing reveals so much about how we learn.
How so?
Well, when you type notes on a laptop, your speed allows you to mindlessly transcribe what you're hearing verbatim. You're basically acting like a human tape recorder.
Right, you're not even thinking about the words.
Exactly. But handwritten notes are inherently slower. You physically cannot write down every single word. And that limitation is actually a feature, not a bug.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it forces your brain into active processing. You have to listen, synthesize the information, decide what actually matters, and then translate it into your own words on the fly. That specific friction is the mechanism that creates cognitive encoding.
It forces the brain to actually build a memory. I do have to push back on this digital utopia we were just painting, though, because if I have a perfectly color-coded Notion dashboard pulling in 2,000 domains, and Zapier is automating all my approvals so I literally don't have to lift a finger.
Sounds nice.
It sounds great, but why do I still feel completely overwhelmed half the time?
Yeah.
Isn't there a massive danger of becoming a full-time digital librarian instead of actually doing the work? It feels like building this massive state-of-the-art server farm with flashing lights and incredible processing power, but never actually installing an operating system.
You're just staring at the lights.
Yeah, you have all the hardware, but no ability to execute a real program.
What's fascinating here is that the learning science addresses that exact illusion of productivity. Building a beautifully organized database gives you a massive dopamine hit.
Oh, it feels amazing.
It feels like you're working.
Yeah.
But it's entirely useless if you don't actively engage your brain through deliberate practice. The data shows that 20% of a specific skill accounts for 80% of your performance.
The classic 80-20 rule.
Right. You have to identify that critical 20%. Practice it deliberately with friction and focus. Organizing the server farm isn't running the code. Managing your external inputs is not the same as mastering your internal engine.
Which brings us perfectly to that internal engine. Those external systems we just talked about are completely useless if the human operating system running them is constantly glitching out.
So true.
To actually process all this perfectly organized information, we have to look under the hood at the neurobiology of how our brains build habits and set intentions.
Precisely. When we dive into the neuroscience of habit formation, we're really looking at a tale of 2 different biological systems.
Okay.
Initially, when you decide to start a new routine, like finally waking up at 6 a.m. to use that fancy Notion dashboard, you're relying on the dopamine-driven reward system.
The honeymoon phase.
Yeah, it's novel, it's exciting, it feels good. But biologically, that dopamine rush is specifically designed to fade over time. It cannot sustain you.
Right.
The second system, the repetition-based system, lives deeper in the midbrain, in an area called the striatum. This is the mechanism that takes over and makes actions automatic, like brushing your teeth or driving a car.
So, relying on feeling motivated to stick to your schedule is a literal biological trap, because the dopamine will always drop off.
100%.
And relying on raw willpower is just as bad, right? I mean, we've all experienced decision fatigue by the end of the day.
Exactly. That's a phenomenon called ego depletion. Willpower is not a character trait. Biologically, it's a finite daily resource.
Like a battery.
Yes. Think about it. By nighttime, you've made hundreds of micro decisions. You decided what to wear, how to respond to an annoying email, what to eat for lunch, how to prioritize a project. Every single choice drains the battery.
Which explains so much.
By 8 p.m., your willpower is largely depleted, which is exactly why late-night snacking or endless doom scrolling happens. To beat this, you have to prioritize systems over willpower. You have to design your environment so the good habit is literally the path of least resistance.
Like the 2-minute rule. You make a new habit so incredibly small that it's physically impossible to fail, just to establish the neural pathway in that striatum you mentioned.
Exactly.
You don't commit to reading a book, you commit to reading one page. And the impact of building these tiny, systematic pathways is actually highly measurable.
Yeah, the data is wild.
There was this incredible Stanford study we looked at showing that maintaining just 7 daily mental strength habits reduced the stress hormone cortisol by 30% after 6 weeks.
30% is massive.
It's insane. If you've ever felt that constant low-level hum of anxiety in your chest, imagine turning the volume down on that by a third, just from systematic daily habits.
And those habits often center around mental fitness. One of the most effective concepts we reviewed is called PQ reps, which comes from positive intelligence. These are essentially 10-second mindfulness exercises designed to interrupt the brain's stress response. For example, focusing intensely on physical sensations, like rubbing two fingers together with such intense attention that you can actually feel the microscopic ridges of your fingerprints.
Which sounds incredibly simple.
It sounds almost too simple, but functionally, it shifts blood flow away from the amygdala, the survival brain, and redirects it into the prefrontal cortex, which handles logic, executive function, and empathy. You are physically exercising your brain's self-command muscle.
You're consciously taking the steering wheel back, and that ties directly into the power of writing down daily intentions. We hear about setting intentions all the time. Like, it's just a nice woo-woo self-help concept.
Manifesting.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a hard biological mechanism behind it called reticular activation, or the RAS.
RAS is a bundle of nerves at your brainstem, and its entire job is to filter out unnecessary information so the important stuff gets through. Your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of sensory data every single second. If you processed all of it, you'd completely go insane. The RAS is the bouncer at the door of your consciousness, deciding what you actually notice.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the RAS as the search bar in your Notion database.
Oh, I like that.
If you have this massive, complex life full of data, and you don't intentionally type in what you're looking for by setting daily intentions, the system just shows you a chaotic, unfiltered mess of raw data.
Just a wall of noise.
Right. You just notice whatever is loudest or scariest or most annoying. But when you write down your intentions for the day, you are literally programming your biological search bar. Suddenly, your brain starts filtering the world to highlight the exact opportunities, solutions, and resources you asked it to look for. You're telling the bouncer who to let in.
I want you to imagine shifting our visual backdrop right now. Imagine zooming out of that sleek, highly organized digital dashboard we started with and zooming straight into the biology of your own brain, like a glowing abstract web of neural pathways.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Because this transition is crucial. We've moved from organizing the external files to optimizing the internal wiring. But as powerful as those habits and intentions are, they're great in a vacuum. The real question is, what happens when life throws a massive wrench into the gears?
Right.
What happens when the server completely goes down? We had to examine the ultimate stress test for our internal systems, which is our emotional reactivity.
And here we have to clarify a vital difference that gets mixed up all the time. The distinction between emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. They are not the same thing.
People definitely use those interchangeably.
Constantly. But emotional intelligence is simply the awareness of feelings. It's knowing that you are getting angry or being able to read the room and know that your colleague is deeply frustrated. Emotional maturity, however, is the ability to apply that awareness constructively. It's the capacity to choose logic and empathy over impulsivity and defensiveness. So, you can be highly emotionally intelligent, you know exactly what everyone in the room is feeling, including yourself. But if you use that information to manipulate people, or if you still throw a passive-aggressive tantrum when you're triggered, you are emotionally immature.
Exactly.
Awareness without regulation is basically useless.
And neurologically, this dynamic plays out as a literal biological tug of war in the brain. On one side, you have the amygdala, the ancient fear and survival center we talked about. On the other side, you have the prefrontal cortex, the center for logic and regulation.
And they fight it out.
Exactly. When the amygdala perceives a threat, and to the modern brain, a psychological threat like a critical email feels identical to a physical predator.
Yeah.
You can hijack the system. It floods your body with adrenaline, shutting down the prefrontal cortex, resulting in emotional dysregulation and pure unthinking impulsivity.
And it's fascinating to see the neurological differences in how we process these threats. In some of the studies we looked at, women were shown to use positive refocusing as a coping strategy more frequently than men. Mechanically, this actively engages the ventral striatum, a region linked to reward and motivation, to essentially downregulate the negative emotion. They're leveraging positive emotion in the service of cooling off the negative ones.
On the flip side, we also see immaturity manifest as something called emotional fusion. This is when a person's psychological boundaries are so blurred that they become entirely dependent dependent on others for their own emotional regulation.
Like a sponge.
Yeah, their internal state is completely fused to how their partner or their boss is behaving. If their boss is stressed, they are stressed. They have no internal firewall.
Wait a second, let me play devil's advocate and get real for a minute.
Go for it.
Because does being emotionally mature just mean rolling over and becoming a robot? Like, if my boss sends me a wildly passive-aggressive Slack message at 4:55 p.m. on a Friday undermining my work, am I supposed to just suppress my anger, smile, and pretend I'm perfectly fine? That doesn't sound emotionally healthy at all. That sounds like a recipe for an ulcer.
This raises an important question, and it's a trap a lot of people fall into. The psychological literature is very clear on this distinction. There's a massive difference between suppression and regulation.
Okay, what's the difference?
Suppression is exactly what you describe. It's shoving the emotion down, biting your tongue, and pretending the anger doesn't exist. Biologically, that just builds internal stress, which will inevitably explode later or cause actual physical health issues.
Right.
Regulation, on the other hand, means feeling the emotion fully. You acknowledge the anger, you feel the heat in your chest, but you create psychological space between the trigger of that Slack message and your response.
You don't just react immediately.
Exactly. You pause, you let the amygdala cool down, and then you choose an action that is aligned with your actual values and long-term goals, rather than just firing off a defensive, career-limiting reply.
It's the difference between a reflex and a choice, which leads us perfectly into the final phase of our manual. Because emotional regulation doesn't just keep our own minds organized. It is the fundamental baseline requirement for connecting with other human beings. We're moving from the internal engine to the interpersonal network, the relational system.
Right, and when we look at relational networks, the psychological research centers heavily on attachment theory.
Which is everywhere right now.
It is, but for good reason.
Yeah.
The core idea is that how we connect as adults is profoundly shaped by the wiring we developed in our early childhood experiences. There are a few core attachment styles. First, there's secure attachment.
The ideal state.
The idea, yeah. These individuals are trusting, they're comfortable with intimacy, but they're also entirely comfortable setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. They don't panic when there's distance.
Then you have the insecure styles, which cause most of the friction. Anxious attachment involves a deep, persistent fear of abandonment. If we map that back to the biology we just learned, an anxious attachment is essentially a hypersensitive amygdala that is constantly scanning the environment for relational threats.
Always looking for danger.
Always. They need constant reassurance that the connection is still there. Avoidant attachment is sort of the opposite. They withdraw from conflict and prioritize extreme self-sufficiency. When things get too intimate or conflict arises, their brain prematurely shuts down the emotional system to prevent an overload.
The sources also briefly touch on reactive attachment disorder, or RE, which is a much more severe clinical condition resulting from early childhood trauma or severe neglect, where a child struggles to form any meaningful bonds at all.
Yeah, that's a very serious clinical diagnosis.
It is. But for the general population, the vast majority of relationship friction comes down to the anxious and avoidant styles clashing with each other. The anxious partner pushes for more reassurance, which triggers the avoidant partner to pull away, which terrifies the anxious partner even more. It's a vicious cycle.
And conflict is going to happen. There is no perfectly optimized relationship devoid of friction. The deep dive into the Gottman method makes this incredibly clear. They talk about the argument hangover.
Oh, everyone knows that feeling.
That awful lingering period of awkward distance and silent resentment after a fight. The goal of a good relationship isn't to never fight. The goal is to master the skill of repair.
Repair is the active, intentional process of restoring the connection after a rupture. And the Gottman research shares specific, actionable tactics for this. For example, using I feel statements instead of accusatory you always statements.
It sounds cliche, but it works.
It really does, because saying I feel overwhelmed when the dishes pile up bypasses your partner's amygdala, whereas saying you never do the dishes triggers an immediate defensive hijack.
Right.
They also emphasize reflective listening, where you actually mirror back what your partner said. So what I'm hearing is that you felt ignored when I did that. So they feel truly understood before you ever introduce your own counterpoints.
And my absolute favorite tactic from the sources, the most surprising and counterintuitive one, is changing your physical state to break the tension.
Yeah.
Literally, one researcher suggested that in the middle of a tense, gridlocked standoff, you should just start start shaking your ass.
I love that piece of advice.
Just doing something so physically absurd and out of context that it shatters the psychological tension and forces a hard reset of your mind chemistry.
It sounds completely silly, but neurologically it makes perfect sense. Physical movement is one of the fastest ways to process accumulated stress hormones out of the body. When you do something absurd, you are actively shifting the state of your nervous system, breaking the amygdala hijack so that the prefrontal cortex can actually come back online and engage in that reflective listening we just talked about.
So, what does this all mean? If we look at this entire stack of information, human attachment styles are basically the API keys of our relationships. Think about Zapier connecting two different apps. A secure attachment is an open API that integrates smoothly. The data flows back and forth, the boundaries are clearly defined, and the connection is stable. An anxious attachment is an API that constantly pings the server over and over, asking, "Are we still connected? Are you still there? Did you get my message?" Until it literally crashes the system. And an avoidant attachment is an API that just blocks the integration entirely, shutting down the port whenever the data load gets a little too overwhelming.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most hopeful takeaway from all of these sources is that you are not hard-coded.
Right.
Your API can be updated. Just like we can use the principles of neuroplasticity and deliberate practice to rewrite our brain's internal habits, we can actively reprogram our insecure attachment styles.
You're not stuck with it.
No, not at all. Through consistent, safe, and regulated relationships, what therapists call building an earned secure attachment, you can literally rewrite your relational API to handle deeper connections.
What an epic journey we've taken today. We started by looking at how to organize the chaos of our external digital lives with tools like Notion and Zapier, but we realized that to actually utilize those tools, true productivity requires the internal biological habits of neuroplasticity. Then we discovered that those habits can only survive the stress of real life if we develop true emotional maturity, the ability to regulate our amygdala. And finally, we learned how that internal maturity is the exact mechanism that builds secure, resilient, and deeply connected relationships.
It really is a complete systems manual.
Yeah.
And it all operates on the exact same underlying principles. Whether you're organizing a massive database, forming a new micro habit, or navigating a gridlock conflict with your partner, it all requires awareness, deliberate practice, and the willingness to actively repair the system when it inevitably breaks down.
And to you, listening right now, whether you are trying to learn a complex new skill using the Cornell method, scale a business, or repair an argument hangover with your spouse, the mechanics really are the same. It's all about creating reliable systems, digital, neural, and emotional, that you can implicitly trust when life gets chaotic.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. What if the friction you're currently experiencing in your daily schedule, the chronic procrastination, the endless digital clutter, the missed deadlines, isn't actually a time management problem at all?
Oh, wow.
What if it's an emotional regulation problem, perfectly disguised as a productivity issue? Are you avoiding that spreadsheet because you genuinely lack the time, or because it triggers an underlying fear of incompetence that your amygdala is desperately trying to protect you from?
Oh man, that is a question that will keep you awake at night. Over the next few days, I highly encourage you to observe your own error codes. When you feel that sudden urge to procrastinate, or snap at a coworker, or obsessively reorganize your Notion boards instead of doing the actual difficult work, take a pause. Check your internal dashboard. Look at the data and see what it's